got the distribution call, you got the placement, you did everything right. And somewhere between the purchase order and the shelf, something went sideways. Your product isn't there, or it's there, but it's wrong. Or nobody can tell you either way. Every CPG brand hits this wall. Most of them hit it more than once. I'm Jordan Carter, founder and CEO of Eileen. Know Thy Shelf is a show for founders and CPG superstars who are done taking anyone's word for what's happening at the shelf. Real stories, real data, one question underneath all of it. Your product is listed as in stock. Is it though? Adam Tosto is Brooklyn born and raised. Today, he is VP of Sales for Maison Villevert, the French house that created Ciroc, sold it to Diageo, and still produces every bottle in cognac. Their G-Vine gin is the third largest premium gin in the world, and yet walk into most American liquor stores and you wouldn't know that it's that popular yet. Adam runs for a global company with a team you can count on one hand, doing sales, marketing, BI all at once. That gap is exactly what we're here to talk about today and hear about how Adam is tackling such a big task with so many great brands. Adam, welcome to the show. Before we get
thank you.
Of course. And before we get into your current role, I'm going to start with your path in the industry. You came up through Gallo, ran teams in the Southern era. You're married to someone who worked at the Empire Wine Division, and you've basically seen every seat at the three-tier table. How did that lead you to running the U.S. for a French spirits house?
Yeah, great question. First, thank you very much, Jordan, for having me. This is awesome. I love people like you and us that are bringing these things to the forefront in a podcast, medium, and giving everybody understanding about like how things are going. So thank you so much for having me. It's awesome. Yeah, as you mentioned, how I personally kind of came through, it was a great opportunity to touch everything. By the time I was 18, I was a busboy and a barback. And then by the time I was of age, I was working behind the stick at bars in the city in New York. From there, I did the thing that a lot of us may have done at some point. I was doing a little modeling, a little acting, and bartending obviously was a good way to keep that money coming in. But you quickly realize that the more you put into bartending and running bars and cocktails, you get a lot out of it. So I continued on that path and then went into management and operations of bars and restaurants here in the city. I was a part owner of one on the Upper West. And as it goes, and during that time, this is like the early 2010s, you meet and interact so much with your distributors and suppliers and brand owners, especially in New York City. And as I was ready to kind of transition out from working 90 to 100 hours as an operator and, running bars and restaurants, I ran into a VP at Infinium Spirits, and that was my first run with the supplier side. I was brought on as the Fernet Branca portfolio manager in New York City and Metro New York, and then transitioned on to market manager with the rest of that portfolio. Went on to Deutsche Family Wine and Spirits, which is where that Gallo training came in, working with all the Southern markets, helping launch small brands, working at small wine distributors. So went from, all three tiers: bar, restaurant, supplier, distributor. And that brought me to where we are today, which was to kind of launch the US based team and company of Maison Villevert, which has been around for a long time, but they were never utilizing a full national team in the US. They had only had importers bringing their brands to the US. So the plan was to, in 2024, when I was brought on, create a team, get us away from importers, import ourselves, sell directly to our distributors, and go from there.
So you've really seen just about everything the three-tier system has to offer. And being the Fernet manager in New York must have been quite the experience, especially in the heyday of Fernet. I'm sure you were out, you nights bouncing around the city.
Oh my God. I have to tell you, that was it's funny because it was as Fernet had just exploded in San Francisco and the Branca family and Infinium, which at the time was under Young's Market, was they had their hands on a grenade. This was about to go everywhere. So they were putting someone in Chicago, and then we were the first New York side. And it was just a ride. Our biggest KPI were bar nights. We're bar and shop. What's the biggest?
Was that the KPI?
Yeah. How many bar nights? I don't even, there was some volume attached, obviously, but it was how many bars in the New York metro area can you get a beer and a shot of Fernet and, things on the menu? And, it was okay, here we go. And it was, yeah, it was pretty cool. It was nuts.
That's always fun. I mean, those periods of time where they're growing like crazy. I did William Grant and Sons on-prem when Hendrix was really hitting its stride, Sailor Jerry, and that whole wave. And I mean, man, you're out every night. At that, looking back on it, that was the best job ever. But then when you're doing it, you're like, I need a break. I can't. I don't know if I could do another bar. I think it took me 2 years to be willing to go back to bars after I finished that role.
Yeah, you're like so spot on with that. And those first 6 months, it's like the honeymoon, and you're like, wow, like man, this is great. I'm getting paid to talk to people and to teach them and try decent Fernet and put it on a menu and throw parties and have fun. And obviously, so coming from the operator position, though, I always had that kind of business mentality, even though there were people in my position that were probably 10 years younger than I was at the time who were kind of like, let's do this party kind of a thing. That, as you mentioned earlier, gave me a little bit of an edge to kind of transition quickly through that, have success into like more of a market manager, take on a bigger part of the portfolio. And then as that, continue to grow your region and things like that. So yeah, there was a lot of fun, but yes, I'm like, I was a little bit older. My wife and I were about, and as you mentioned, she at the time was working at Empire as a field sales manager in the wine division. So, and she had come from bars and restaurants. So we kind of did the same path. And, but that was like right as we were starting to have a family. And, so it's fun when you bring your pregnant, wife with your first child to a Fernet night, but then once it's not as fun.
Well, you only get one of those. Yeah, man, that's fine. And when did you start that, let's say the off-prem or omni-channel? So you started on-prem, obviously a very heavy on-prem background, evolved through the different channels. When was it we started getting your hands, wet in your feet wet in the off-prem?
Yeah. So it wasn't much after that, probably a year into Infinium with the Bronca portfolio. It was doing so well, the natural transition. And as you know, once you're building the on-premise, off-premise comes right behind that. And so they saw that was, and I was already doing tastings in store and stuff. So I was given more responsibility, more than just Metro, and that kind of transition also into the rest of the portfolio, which at the time Infinium we were launching Teeling, which was a brand new Irish whiskey at the time. We had Sif Smith Gin. We had Zaya Rum, Coraleo. So I was touching all the spirits and then was given both channels. So that was within that year or two with Infinium. And then from there, I never looked back. And I will tell you to learn, and this was a specific time, so I think Hugh and I can understand this. I learned so much from the Southern team because at the time it was split wine and spirits in New York and it was split channel. And so it was very cut and dry. Like, this is your off-premise team. This is your on-premise team. And so I was able to really learn a lot from those directors and the managers and the reps, because that's all I was like, I'll work with you any day of the week. And that was a lot of learning because, as we know, off-premise is a very different beast. It still is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and buyers are very specific compared to that. And that's how I always ended up training my team, was that on premise, it's like a conversation. You're definitely going to want to include your features and benefits and, your sales, your 7 steps to a sales call. But retail, it's, here are all of those very specific things that you have to make sure you hit in a very quick way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all execution. It's all focus. It's all attention. When it comes to Maison Villevert, for anyone who's listening that's not familiar with the portfolio, obviously I mentioned G-Vine. What other brands are in that portfolio?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and you are correct. We are still producing and supplying Ciroc under contract to Diageo. That was that first launch brand almost 25, 30 years ago, actually, which is crazy. So yeah, G-Vine naturally came out of that sale, as it was the first fresh gin that was made 100% from grapes and cognac, just like Ciroc. And then Nuaison gin, which is more of that London dry. That then brought us to the tequila side, bringing cognac and France to Mexico by aging the tequilas in cognac and Sauterne barrels. The first partner iteration was with Carlos Camarena. So we all know from Beam and to El Tesoro and all that. And then came La Quintaine vermouths, which is part of that's the first and the only vermouth made from Pinot de Chiron. And then continuing on, we have our Anne Bonny rum, and we bought the Celtic Whiskey Distillery, which is a distillery in northwestern France on the coast in Brittany. And so we have French single malts, and it's just, and then our portfolio, and we're still growing. And to mention, we are Maison Villevert is a distributor outside of the US. So we own Paragon Brands, which is a distributor in the UK. We are just Maison Villevert distributor in France, Spain, Portugal, and we distribute other brands that are not ours, obviously, as a distributor. So there's a lot to it, but those that I mentioned earlier are the ones that I currently have available in the U.S. with plans to bring in our cognacs and other things that we have that are available in Europe.
And so I think when we spoke, the thing that really stood out was with G Vine, you mentioned is the third largest premium gin in the world, but still somewhat of a nascent product, just breaking in. What is it like to have that really global appeal, global success, and then trying to build it in a new market that's hyper competitive?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And it's an interesting question because the brand was created not far after Ciroc. It took, it's been in the US in different ways. So you either meet a buyer who's like, oh my God, I totally remember G-Vine. Where has this been? So you get that and you get to reintroduce it. You get people who are familiar with global brands or, oh, man, I know G-Vine. I'm so happy it's here. Or you get the ones that have zero idea, never heard of it. So it's like you get to build a brand new brand, from scratch to a lot of people. But the one benefit that we get to have is that we're doing it on a platform and an infrastructure that's been there. So we've all been in those positions where we've grown or launched brand new spirits or wines or RTDs, and you got to talk about like everything from scratch. But we have at least a few connecting stories or facts that can bring a buyer in, so they're not, because as you know, buyers are very much these days gun shy on something that has zero traction or sales or any sort of data. So it's weird where I get to experience all different types and different markets. And it's still like I was just in Portland where we relaunched G-Vine. It was there, as you know, it's a control state and a whole liquor board. And I had buyers come in. They're like, my God, I carried G-Vine. Must have been 5 years ago. And I'm like, cool. They go, is it available in the liquor board? I'm like, yep. So it's a lot of that. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a good way to give people an opportunity to learn about it again, learn about it for the first time. And they do that face that you were saying when I say it is technically the third largest premium gin in the world. They're like, really? I've never even heard of this thing. And I go, yep, it's, a lot of Spanish people in Ibiza drinking gin and tonic.
It's a great market. And it's like anything, it gives you a lot of, I think, proof points, proof of concept, breaking in. That's something I think a lot of emerging brands would love to have. So it gives you really nice ammunition in those discussions. I think last time we spoke, you mentioned you work for a global company, really big, successful company, but you are essentially running a small business inside of the company. So you're building a completely new business in the US, really building it up. You're doing sales, marketing, BI research. What does a normal week look like for you? And like, what are the things that tend to fall through the cracks, just trying to cover so much?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we have a really great global infrastructure that has been operating for years in France, throughout, Europe and all of that. So there is that base that we always have, but it always comes with some challenges because, I mean, even just logistically, we're 6 hour difference in New York, and California, we're 9 hour difference. So you have that language barrier, laws and compliance, things like that. So there's always that gap to try and rely on the global part of it. Here, what was really great is that John Sebastian Robiquet, who created and started our company, one of his sons, Alexander, is in Los Angeles and has been here living and working outside of our industry. And he took it upon himself as the president of the company which is this project that we're doing, is to take it back like we have. So Alexander's been great. He gave me the the freedom and the flexibility and the support to like, let's build this out. Where are we? So it's almost like you kind of have a clean slate and to do all of that. Now, as you said, what things fall through the cracks. As we first started, we were doing everything. So we were relying on our French counterparts to do things like compliance and logistics and things that perform here in the US, which we always say there are 50 countries in the US when it comes to liquor laws, right? So they're not aware of it. So the first thing we did was find, she's amazing and she's been with us for 2 years now, is find our director of ops, logistics, and supply chain. So that has really stopped really anything from falling through the cracks. But those were some of the things where you're like, oh, a PO, do we have the right invoice? And did we tell the right address, and oh my, did we forget to register this brand? But with Kim, she's just like the best. She's on it. And I will tell anybody who's ever going to get into this or have their business here in the US, having an amazing person who can handle logistics, supply chain, and operations is the vital heartbeat of your business.
But and do you have a kind of national partnership or alignment with any specific distributor, or how are you tackling?
Yeah, great question. When we inherited the business, as I said, we had importers who were aligned with some national partners. Those weren't the best opportunities for us at the time. So when I brought everything back, I reevaluated a lot of our distributors. And at this point, we actually the only one that we have more than one state is American Northwest A&W, which is Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And then we have Integrity, who handles Kansas and Missouri. But outside of that, we are independent distributors in the 19 states that we're in. Some of them are loosely connected, like we're with Brescom, Barton in Connecticut, which has some connections to the Magliocos and the Breakthroughs and things like that. But otherwise, we fit very well with either a beer and wine heavy distributor that is growing their spirits portfolio, or, a craftier, I say craft, but small to mid-sized spirit distributors. We just don't fit in a Breakthrough, even with their small emerging brand divisions. We are just not that type of supplier.
And is a lot of that based off of just attention needed, or is it more the execution, boots on the ground? Where would you say the biggest difference between, let's say, a Breakthrough Southern Reyes to an independent distributor? And where did you see the biggest value?
So not that Southern and Breakthrough and Reyes don't do this, but because of the suppliers that are already in those larger distributors, the smaller independent ones are the ones where you are going to find them actually helping you build and grow together, because they are not relying on that revenue from 15 containers a month of Tito's or, things like that. So they're actually going out to get their revenue and get their profits. So that aligns with us, because we're going out to get those placements. And the one thing that we've found, and I only say this not just because I worked with them, but like our brands, the minute either they're tasted or known about, they're sticky. So distributors see that very quickly and jump on it. So when you have a sticky brand that is well positioned in markets and support from a supplier that makes money for both sides, it's a win-win. So that's kind of why I've seen these partnerships really work well. And, it's happening in a few markets where, unfortunately, we are starting to slightly outgrow those smaller distributors. It's okay. It kind of happens. That's what you get if their infrastructure is not as big and you start to get a lot of traction. But that's okay. That's a good thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the goal, is you need to incubate and then expand as the market justifies. So I think that's a great approach. Not getting into the fun stuff, data. Everyone loves talking about data. But you and I we're chatting, and you mentioned you're playing kind of the full stack, Nielsen, IWSR, the NABCA data. But you mentioned something I think that stuck with me, and it's July, late July, and you're still sometimes waiting for data from April, May. What is that like, trying to kind of manage with data so far in the past, dictating decisions in the current?
Yeah, that is a great question. And even in this day and age, in 2026, there are markets that there is no capturing the data that really helps you do your day to day, month to month, quarter to quarter forecasting and projections and understanding inventory. Where as a smaller company, as you know, like we don't have that luxury of holding containers in storage because we pay for it. So we're more on the pallets, and things like that. We're not as small as just cases, but it's still a cost. So the best that I could say is that we try to find as many avenues to collect that data. So we do subscribe to like VIP iDig, which is very helpful to those that subscribe. We build as many strong relationships with those logistics and inventory counterparts at the distributor to say, please, can we have any depletion reports that you have as soon as possible? But the one thing that is net is just the way you have to live is NABCA, as you mentioned, and control states. There is no getting around it. There is just the only way to kind of really get around that is the IRI Nielsen data, which again is going to be is also delayed to get those register rings, but that is important. I'm still trying to really, when it comes to NABCA, my opportunity is trying to see where the stores are, which one is selling the most when it comes to like state-run stores, so that I can push our distributor to push the liquor board to get those reorders, because we're not a Hendrix or a thing that they're noticing, oh my God, I need this. We're still building, and although they do well. So unfortunately, I have in the past sent a QB, a quarterly business review to France with missing data. And they understand it now. When I first started, they're like, this doesn't look right. And I have to put in like a little thing in my presentation, still missing Colorado, still missing Kansas, you
Okay.
know. So
And getting back in time then to let's say the gala days, you were, running surveys, spot checks, store visits, and that was a really big part of even when I was coming up. There was a lot of boots on getting out there. It seems like a lot of that has really faded away from the distributor standpoint, the sales rep standpoint, merchandisers. What's, in your opinion, has replaced that? Is there anything that's replaced it? Is it more been just, hey, offload it, it's someone else's responsibility?
yeah, yeah, we did talk about this, and I do agree. And that was, as much as everybody hated doing surveys, they were, if you can get them close to actual and accurate, they were helpful. But they were helpful when they were done in a collaborative way, where if you had that type of relationship with your distributor, if you were on the supplier side and you could go spot checks and surveys as a supplier distributor partnership, they were very helpful. So I don't see those anymore. So what I think people, and it depends on the state, I think, is they're relying on either like a fintech data, or they're relying on store level data, or you are just hoping and wishing that you can find a way to get that survey, because I don't see merchandisers at the distributor level. I think on the beer it may still be there. Now that's the one thing that exactly. So that's the one thing that we're not involved in. Ours are all either, vermouths and spirits. So I don't have any beer in my portfolio. So I definitely do see that. And I think I know that because we're with Manhattan Beer, New York Wine and Spirits in New York, and they're actually very good at surveying and kind of really understanding where their beer and RTDs are. But outside of that, on the spirit side, you're right. It seems as though distributors have walked away. And I think what you were asking about is that they're automating a lot of things.
Yes.
And yes, it's AI.
Someone else needs to do it. It's happening with, don't worry, it's good. I think there's a lot of that we hear at our side,
Yeah.
Stores just push the order, and it's like, well, what if that order doesn't come through? What if that product was stolen? What if it says it's in stock and it's not in stock? We see a lot of that, really, especially brands that need every POD to drive velocity, prove that it works. They're killers. But touching on Manhattan Beer, I know you were saying, your focus is to stay with distributors who give you attention. Manhattan Beer seems to be a really great partner, but Empire Merchant is kind of the big behemoth that could be a fit. Is that type of hand-to-hand kind of field level combat what you need right now more than an Empire who might have more reach or kind of more push when it comes to getting PODs and things along those lines?
Yeah, and it is. And it is because we're coming from a smaller pond, per se, than an ocean trying to fill it, if you kind of take that analogy. So one of the things that we've been able to do, and we've been very specific, is that even when we go with these smaller wine or wine and beer or wine, beer, and spirits distributors in any of the states, whether it's California, New York, Florida, we do ask, hey, where is your reach? Because as small as we are, we do have like alignment with Total Wine in 15 states. So those do, like, if you take Florida, for instance, we're in Miami and all the way up in Jacksonville and all that. So there is those questions that come up. So a lot of times the beer distributors touch the entire state because it's beer and they have that. So that gives, it's kind of a weird mix where yes, Empire and Southern in New York always have the stretch. Upstate in New York, they can do it all, touch everything. Huge sales force, but we are a very small fish in a very large ocean. And I know everybody says that, but what we end up being at like Manhattan Beer, New York Wine and Spirits is we become a nice sized fish in their really good sized pool where we're giving them opportunities in accounts they were never going to get into, specifically on premise, or very crafty wine boutique shops like Astor. They weren't really doing very much business in Astor, and that's probably our biggest retailer in New York. So those are the advantages, like you said. And then when they see that, it becomes that hand to hand, like, hey, you guys are great for us. We're great for you. Yin and yang. We offer each other something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great perspective, and even just kind of thinking that same vein of like finding a niche that you can capture is a really important thing when you're a brand trying to emerge or reestablish yourself in the US. And we spoke really briefly about how you guys are launching a new kosher whiskey, I believe, right? As a whiskey, it might, and so something like that. How do you take that and drive that into the retail space, being able to say, okay, we've got something that's very uniquely kind of appealing to, let's say, the New York market, but take that kind of opportunity and push it to retail effectively.
Yeah, and so that is so something as niche and as specific, for instance, like we've had our whiskeys, but now we have two of the single malts certified kosher, which is very unique and very specific. So it's like first start from way beyond and say, okay, where are we going with this? It's not all 1920 markets, because some people are like, that really means nothing to us here in Missouri, but it means something in like a New York or a South Florida. So like you said, so it's that is one of those moves that I go directly to the distributor and I say, hey, you guys are in these stores every day, especially here in New York, for instance. I know you have kosher stores and that are buying your, because they have bourbons and things like that in their portfolio. Would this be a fit? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do this together. I think this is a unique opportunity for us to walk in and add a SKU from our portfolio, from your portfolio now, to give us a little more facing on the shelf and something unique. And so that is a very specific thing, but that is something I would rely on a distributor for to walk that into the right place. Yeah, exactly.
One of the last kind of few questions here, or discussion points. You mentioned Alex, your president, told his last company to OpenAI, Maison Villevert,
yes.
Right? And he obviously is tech forward. It gets excited about tech. How do you see tech playing into the wine and spirits world, whether it's supplier side or distributor side, versus where it is today with so many new powerful tools hitting the market?
Yeah, I love that question. It's great. And I have embraced Alexander's, want and ability to infiltrate what we're doing with tech things. So it starts as early as like the right CRM, especially for smaller businesses, smaller companies or smaller teams. It's super important to have those CRMs and those check-ins. And then, going out towards AI, when we like to utilize AI in our company, instead of replacing a human, it's to support what we're doing as humans in a way that it unlocks our time. So if I have a lot of things that I'm doing, so it makes us even more nimble and more scrappy. So I would say that we utilize AI because we don't have a BI department, for instance, which I had at Deutsche and you have at Southern and you have 10, 20, 30, 40 people in there. So we utilize AI but it's based on our input. So, and I'm going to fully date myself, so be aware. In the 80s, there was a movie called Weird Science. And I know some people may not know it. It was one of my favorites. The whole idea was that they were trying to build this beautiful woman. Remember, it's the 80s, so take it with a grain of salt. But the way they did it was they were feeding this giant computer like pictures and ideas and things, but they had to feed it all this information to spit out what they wanted. So we operate with AI like that, where we are giving all of our information and all of our data and all of the things that we need to this powerful machine to help us do these things, to allow us to be able to be nimble. So that's where I think, and Alexander really has been pivotal in that, is that he's an expert. So he helps us utilize them faster, more efficiently, and leave the other stuff behind that is distracting, where you say, you're my AI, go and do all this for me and make my calls. And we don't do that, because I don't personally believe you can replace sales with robots. We know that because we erase every spam call that we get today.
All blocking out.
Yeah. So to answer your question, we use it in everything. And the great thing that Alexander has done is that he's gone to France and helped them kind of revamp their whole IT and things like that. So I like the way that approaches it, is that he approaches it more as like, this is a tool and this is to utilize, and it can enhance your abilities, as opposed to replacing 100 people in a company. So I hope that answers, but yeah, that's been really,
I think it's a great perspective. I'm a big proponent of AI or technology being an amplifier versus purely a cost savings opportunity, which I think it kind of approach it as we can save money by getting rid of people versus this will let us do X times more in terms of productivity. Now, the productivity and output is, I think, much more of the forward-looking approach to how to tackle tech, and in particular, the space that requires so much human to human involvement, such as the Here's world.
Yeah, I will say that, excuse me, the human element is still the most important thing in our industry. And I hear it from buyers. And because as much as, as an executive, I work a lot in my office, I'm in every field. I'm in every market that we are available in. I've been there, and I've spoken to as many distributors and as partners and buyers as I can, because you have to. You can't just you can't just manage from above and hope everything works out. And so there are buyers to this day, and I see it all the time, that are, please, I just want to talk to a rep that has got some info that's going to sell me on this. I want to be sold this whiskey or this, spiked kombucha, whatever it is, instead of a computer saying, you've bought this before, now you're going to buy this.
Yeah.
So as much as larger companies think it's okay to consolidate and do all that, I would say take a moment. Nobody's listening to me about that. Like the chaplains aren't saying, okay, Adam said this. But, I would take a moment, because people are important in this industry. It still is. I'll say that till I die.
Well, I think you go back, and this is me on my soapbox, the industry's been around long. I mean, just going back to the early days of fermenting to become wine, it's been around forever. And I think the diversity of the industry as well always makes it so exciting to walk into a store and discover something new or find a new product. Obviously requires selling that. But if everyone just relies purely on, hey, this is what it's being recommended I order, or this is what I think the system says I should order, we're going to just have this regression to the mean that essentially makes every store look the same. You might as well be in the biggest country that just has everything that's the same products, same categories, because that's about what it says is going to sell. I think you want to walk in and be like, man, I never had this, cognac aged tequila. Why? That's not just going to be top of mind, but if someone pitches me, I might be interested in trying it. So I do think that's a huge part of this business, and I think it's always going to be a huge part.
Yeah, fully. And there's also that last element that you were saying, and know thyself, as this is the human element expands and extends all the way to our teams that are in-store tasting teams, because those people are very important, especially for us. We would not be doing the type of expansion and business in Total Wine, for instance, in Florida, if it wasn't for the tasting teams, the humans in there, liquid to lips, and doing it. Nothing can replace that. There is no way to replace that, in my opinion. And so there's an extension of human element there. So look how many human things we need to get from the grape to someone's bag in Miami, at a Total Wine.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, I really appreciate you being on. This is exactly the type of inside baseball combo I love to have. And you've lived more sides of this industry than most people. So you really have a good 360 perspective of everything that happens from the time something's made to the time it's consumed. And so I really just appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. And I hope the portfolio continues to expand quickly. And I really, I'm just excited for people to get out there and try some of your products.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And sorry, I thank you so much. Like, this was such a great opportunity. Like I said, I love what you're doing. Great questions. We got to talk about these things. And I hope you keep doing it and keep talking to more people and getting all these great perspectives. So I really appreciate the opportunity for sure, man.
Thank you so much, Adam. And if anyone listening heard anything that sounds familiar, particularly if you're dealing with frequent distribution and you're trying to figure out what's happening on the shelf, come visit us at shopwitheileen.com. We'll set you up with your first free demo, get you eyes on the shelf, within 2 to 5 days for under $10 a store, hopefully make your scaling a little less painful. And as always, know thy shelf.